Read the tag. Marta, read it out loud. Astrid's friend Vivian shrieked, wine sloshing from her glass. My fingers trembled as I turned the golden tag toward the light. The words blurred through tears I refused to let fall. Old dog, if found, return to nursing home. The laughter crescendoed like a symphony of cruelty. Someone started barking. Others joined in. My own son barked at me, his face red with wine and mirth. You should see yourself, Astrid gasped between giggles. Like a confused puppy. She pulled out her phone, started recording. This is going on Instagram. My mother-in-law's face is priceless. The room spun, but I sat perfectly still. I was a teacher for 40 years. I'd learned to maintain composure while children threw tantrums. But these weren't children. These were adults who should know better, led by my own flesh and blood. Put it on. Soren shouted. Model it for us. He stood up, stumbling toward me with the collar. Here, let me help you, old girl. His hands reached for my neck, and something ancient and primal rose in my chest. Don't touch me. My voice came out stronger than I expected, cutting through their laughter like a blade. Soren froze, his hands suspended in midair. Oh, she's sensitive, Astrid mocked. It's just a joke, Marta. Every year you give us these practical, boring gifts. We thought we'd give you something funny, for once. Lighten up. Practical. Boring. The hand-knitted scarves that took me weeks to make. The preserves from fruit I grew myself. The photo albums I'd assembled of Dimitri's childhood, hoping to remind him who he used to be. I looked at my son then, really looked at him. When had he become this stranger? His father's strong jaw was there, but weak with indulgence. His father's broad shoulders, but slouched with moral cowardice. Dimitri, I said quietly, do you think this is funny? He couldn't meet my eyes. Come on, Mom. Don't be so dramatic. It's just, Astrid thought. He trailed off, unable to finish, unable to stand up for me, unable to be the man I'd raised him to be. Astrid thought. That's where all his sentences led now. Astrid wanted. Astrid decided. When had my son become a ventriloquist dummy, with her hand up his back, making his mouth move? The collar lay in my lap like a dead thing, its leather still warm from being handled by so many eager hands. Little Elsa piped up from across the table. Grandma looked sad. Why is everyone laughing? For a moment, silence. Then Astrid's sharp voice. Elsa, mind your manners. Grandma's fine. She just doesn't understand humor. A 7-year-old had more empathy than anyone else at this table. A child could see what these adults refused to acknowledge, that cruelty dressed as humor is still cruelty. I stood up slowly, my arthritis making me wince. Where are you going? Dimitri asked, finally finding his voice. We haven't had cake yet. The cake. I could see it on the sideboard. Store-bought, despite Astrid telling me they couldn't afford one when I'd offered to buy it. Vanilla, I said, looking at it. Eric loved chocolate. You loved chocolate. When did you stop being the person who loved chocolate cake? The question hung in the air like smoke. Nobody answered. Nobody moved. I picked up the collar, held it up to the light one more time. The leather was expensive, high quality. They'd spent more on this cruel joke than they'd spent on my last 5 birthdays combined. I need some air, I said, walking toward the kitchen. Behind me, the laughter started again, quieter now but still there. Drama queen, I heard Astrid whisper. This is why we never invite her to anything. I stood in my old kitchen, surrounded by Astrid's renovations, and opened the drawer where I'd always kept important papers. Still there, under her collection of takeout menus. Everything I needed. Everything they'd forgotten existed. The folder was thick, heavy, with 5 years of records. 5 years of payments. 5 years of being bled dry, while they lived like royalty in my castle. When I walked back into that dining room, I was no longer the bent old woman who'd entered it. My spine was straight, my shoulders back. The folder in my hands felt like armor, like a sword, like justice delayed but not denied. The conversations stopped mid-sentence. "What's that?" Astrid asked, her voice tinged with annoyance. "Marta, we're trying to have a party here." I set the folder on the table with deliberate force. The wine glasses jumped. "Yes," I said. "Let's talk about this party. Let's talk about all your parties. Let's talk about who pays for them." I opened the folder and began laying out papers like tarot cards revealing a fortune. Mortgage statements, utility bills, property tax assessments, insurance documents, 5 years of financial hemorrhaging, all in black and white. "What are you doing?" Dmitri stood up, his face pale. "Mom, this is inappropriate." Inappropriate. That word almost made me laugh. "You want to know what's inappropriate?" I picked up the collar, dangled it between us. "Giving your mother a dog collar for her birthday is inappropriate. Taking her money while treating her like an animal is inappropriate. Living in her house while planning her funeral is inappropriate." Gasps rippled through the room. "How dare you?" Astrid hissed, but I cut her off. "Oh, I dare. I dare, because I heard you on the phone with your sister. She can't last much longer. Everything's in her name. We just have to wait it out." Those were your exact words, weren't they? Her face went white, then red. "You were eavesdropping?" As if that was the crime here. "This house," I continued, gesturing to the walls around us, "is mine. Every brick, every tile, every board. The mortgage? In my name. Paid by me. These bills? All mine. You've lived here rent-free for 5 years, while I've lived in a guest house with no heat, eating at food banks to afford your lifestyle." The room was dead silent now. Even the children stared wide-eyed. "That's not. We had an arrangement," Dmitri stammered. "We take care of the house." I laughed then, bitter as black coffee. "Take care of it? You've destroyed everything Eric and I built. You tore out his cabinets, cut down our trees, erased our memories like they were stains. You've taken care of nothing but yourselves." I pulled out a specific paper, the deed to the house. But here's the beautiful thing about legal documents. They don't care about your assumptions or your entitlement. They care about names and signatures. "You can't kick us out," Astrid said, but her voice shook. "We have rights. We've lived here for 5 years." I smiled, then. The first real smile I'd felt in months. "You're right. You have rights. Tenant rights. Which means I have to give you 30 days notice." I pulled out another document, one I'd had a lawyer prepare weeks ago, hoping I'd never need it. "Consider this your notice. 30 days to figure out how to pay for your own life. The mortgage payment is due on the 1st. It's $3,200. The utilities average $500. Insurance is $400. Property tax is due quarterly. That's $2,000. Good luck." The papers fluttered as I set them down, like white flags of surrender. But I wasn't surrendering. I was finally fighting back. "Mom, please," Dmitri said, and for a moment he sounded like my little boy again. "Where will we go? What about the kids?" I looked at my grandchildren, innocent in all this but raised to see me as worthless. Maybe their parents should have thought about that before teaching them to laugh at their grandmother. Before showing them that cruelty is acceptable if it's funny enough. I picked up the collar one last time. "You wanted to treat me like a dog. Well, this dog just bit back. And unlike you, I don't need a collar to know my worth. I learned it through 40 years of teaching, through raising you alone after your father died, through sacrificing everything so you could have a better life. A life you've used to humiliate me. I set the collar on top of the bills. Happy birthday to me. The silence that followed could have filled an ocean. 23 faces stared at me like I'd grown another head. Vivian's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the hardwood floor Eric had installed. The sound broke the spell. You can't be serious, Astrid said, her voice climbing. This is our home. We've made it beautiful. We've improved it. I looked around at her improvements. The sterile white walls where family photos once hung. The modern fixtures that had replaced Eric's handcrafted details. You've made it yours, I corrected. But it was never yours to make. And now you have 30 days to find something that is. Soren laughed nervously. This is part of the joke, right? You're getting us back. When I didn't smile, his laughter died. The room began to empty as guests remembered urgent appointments, early mornings, anywhere but here. Within minutes, only family remained. Dmitri slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. Astrid paced like a caged leopard, her heels clicking on the floor. We'll sue, she announced. We'll get a lawyer. You can't just throw us out. I pulled out my phone, showed her the recording I'd made of their party. Their laughter, their barking, their cruelty all captured. Go ahead. I'm sure a judge would love to see how you treat the woman who's been supporting you. I'm sure the PDA would love to see it too, Astrid. Aren't you running for president? Her face went ashen. Her precious reputation, more important to her than anything, hung by a thread. You wouldn't. But she knew I would. The old Marta wouldn't have, but that woman had died somewhere between the food bank and the dog collar. Mom, let's talk about this rationally. Dmitri tried. We're family. We can work this out. Family. The word tasted bitter. Family doesn't mock each other's poverty while spending their money. Family doesn't plan for each other's deaths. Family doesn't give dog collars as gifts. I looked at my grandchildren, silent and confused at the children's table where they'd place me. Family doesn't teach children that their grandmother is worthless. Elsa started crying. I don't think you're worthless, Grandma. One tiny voice of kindness in a sea of cruelty. I know, sweetheart. This isn't your fault. Henrik stood up, walked over to me. In his small hand was the compass I'd bought him, still wrapped. I saw you hide this in the closet last week. Is it for me? I nodded, tears finally threatening. Were you watching for me? He nodded back. Sometimes I see you in the garden at night. You look sad. A 9-year-old boy had seen what his parents refused to acknowledge. How could you? Astrid turned on Dmitri. Your mother is destroying our lives, and you're just sitting there? But Dmitri was staring at the mortgage papers, doing math in his head. We can't afford this, he whispered. Even with both our salaries, we can't afford this house. Reality was settling in like winter frost. Then maybe, I said, standing to leave, you should have thought about that before you bit the hand that fed you. Or in this case, before you collared it. I walked toward the door, my exit as dignified as I could make it. Where will you go? Dmitri called after me. It's December. It's cold. I turned back one last time. Funny how you care about that now. I've been cold for 5 years. But don't worry about me. Worry about yourselves. The bank doesn't accept cruelty as payment. I left them there in the ruins of their own making. The table still set with fine china they couldn't afford. The cake uneaten, 3 candles, 6 and 3, waiting to be lit. They'd even gotten my age wrong. I was 63, not 36. Or maybe that was part of the joke too. Another way to show how little they paid attention, how little I mattered. As I walked to the guest house, I heard Astrid screaming, Dmitri pleading, the children crying. The sound should have broken my heart. Instead, it sounded like justice, like the world finally making sense again. like the collar breaking free from a neck that had worn it far too long. By morning, 17 missed calls lit up my phone. Dmitri, Astrid, even Soren. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I called Linnea from the food bank. "I need a favor," I said. "I'm looking for a small apartment. Something I can actually afford." Within hours, she'd found me a place. 1 bedroom above the old bakery on Harbor Street, where Eric used to buy me cinnamon rolls every Sunday. The owner, Mr. Anderson, remembered me from those days. "Marta, Eric's wife. I always wondered what happened to you." When I told him a shortened version of my story, his eyes grew hard. "Family shouldn't treat family that way. The apartment's yours. First month free, while you get sorted." Kindness from a near stranger, while my own blood had offered nothing but mockery. I packed my few belongings while watching Dimitri's car come and go all day. He was meeting with banks, I assumed, trying to figure out how to refinance a house he couldn't afford. Astrid's Mercedes disappeared for hours, returning with her sister's SUV following. They were already planning their move. It seemed good. The faster they left, the sooner I could reclaim my home. Or sell it. The thought had been growing since last night. Why stay where every corner held a shadow of betrayal? Why keep a house that had become a prison? The market was good. The location was prime. I could sell, pay off the remaining mortgage, and have enough left to live simply but comfortably. The American dream Eric and I had built didn't have to be my nightmare anymore. Around sunset, Dmitri knocked on the guest house door. I let him stand there for 5 minutes before answering. He looked haggard, aged 10 years in one night. "Mom, please, can we talk?" I let him in, but didn't offer coffee. The power dynamics had shifted, and we both knew it. "Astrid's leaving me," he said without preamble. "She says if I can't provide the lifestyle she deserves, she'll find someone who can." I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity. Nothing. "That's between you and her," I said. "But Mom, what about the kids? They're innocent in this." Now he played the grandchildren card. After teaching them I was worthless. "They can visit me in my new apartment. If they want to. If you haven't poisoned them against me completely." His face crumpled. "I never meant for it to go this far. It was just, Astrid thought it would be funny. She said you were too serious, too boring. She wanted to liven things up." "By humiliating me?" I asked. "By comparing me to a dog?" He couldn't answer. We sat in silence while the clock ticked and the truth settled between us like sediment in still water. "Do you remember," I said finally, "when you were 8 and Tommy Morrison called you stupid? You came home crying. Do you remember what I told you?" He nodded slowly. "You said words could hurt worse than fists. You said cruel people were just scared people trying to feel powerful." The irony hung between us like a noose. "I became Tommy Morrison," he whispered. "Worse. Tommy was a child. You're a grown man who let his wife turn his mother into a punchline." He started crying then, ugly sobs that shook his whole body. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." But sorry was just a word, and words, as I'd taught him, could hurt worse than fists. "I need you to leave," I said. "Take your apologies to someone who hasn't heard them before. Take them to your wife, your children, yourself. But don't bring them here. I'm done being your emotional garbage can." He stood to go, then turned back. "What about Dad? What would he think of all this?" The question was meant to wound me, but I was done bleeding for him. "Eric would be ashamed," I said simply. "Not of me, of you, of the man who took his name and dragged it through designer dirt. He worked construction his whole life to give you opportunities he never had. And you used those opportunities to become someone who gives his mother a dog collar for her birthday. Dmitri left without another word. Through the window, I watched him walk back to the house, my house, where Astrid was probably packing her jewelry and planning her exit strategy. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Brenner from the library stood at my door with a casserole and a fierce expression. "Linnea told me everything," she said, pushing past me into the tiny space. "That woman, that Astrid, she's been talking about you at the country club for years. Calling you pathetic, saying you were a burden. We all knew it was wrong, but nobody wanted to get involved. I'm sorry, Marta. We should have stood up for you." She set the casserole down and pulled me into a hug that smelled like lavender and old books. "You're not alone," she whispered. "You've never been alone. You just had the wrong people around you." Within an hour, 3 more women arrived. Former colleagues, church friends, neighbors who'd watched the situation unfold from afar. They brought food, company, and righteous anger on my behalf. "I saw that party through the window," said Mrs. Chun from 2 houses down. "All those cars, all that noise, and they couldn't even invite you properly? I told my husband something was wrong. They helped me pack, their chatter filling the cold guest house with warmth it had lacked for years. Mrs. Brenner found the notebook where I'd tracked all the money I'd given Dmitri and Astrid. Sweet heaven, she breathed. This is enough to buy a small house outright." Mrs. Chun, who worked at a law firm, took photos of every page. "Just in case they try anything legal. This is evidence of financial abuse." Financial abuse. I hadn't known there was a term for what had been happening to me. It sounded official, legitimate, like my suffering hadn't been imaginary or overdramatic, as Astrid always implied. By noon, my few possessions were packed and loaded into Mrs. Brenner's van. As we drove away, I saw Astrid in the window of my bedroom. She and Dmitri had taken the master suite, of course. She was on the phone, gesturing wildly, probably talking to her father, who'd always bailed her out before. But Daddy's money couldn't pay my mortgage. Daddy's money couldn't buy back the dignity they'd tried to steal. The bakery apartment was small but clean, with windows that faced the harbor. Mr. Anderson had left fresh bread on the counter and a note for new beginnings. The women helped me unpack, arranged my few pieces of furniture, hung Eric's photo on the wall. "It's perfect," Mrs. Chun declared. "Small but dignified, like a studio in Paris." They'd brought housewarming gifts too. A throw blanket, a potted plant, a set of dishes that matched. That evening, as I sat in my new home surrounded by the kindness of near strangers, my phone rang. It was Henrik. "Grandma?" "Mom left. She took Elsa to Aunt Vivian's house. Dad's crying. I'm scared." My heart cracked. "Where are you, sweetheart?" "In my room." Dad locked himself in his office. I can hear him throwing things. I thought of that little boy watching me from his window, seeing my sadness when his parents couldn't. "Pack a bag," I told him. "Your father will be okay, but you need somewhere safe tonight. I'll call him and tell him you're coming to my new place." Dmitri answered on the first ring. "Mom." He sounded drunk. "Henrik needs to stay with me tonight," I said firmly. "You're in no state to care for him." There was no argument. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." 20 minutes later, Mrs. Brenner delivered Henrik to my door. He stood there with his backpack and the compass I'd given him, looking lost. "Grandma, why did everything fall apart?" I pulled him into the apartment, into a hug he melted into. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "things need to fall apart so better things can come together. Your parents will figure things out. But tonight, you're safe with me." We ate soup and bread while he told me about school, about friends, about dreams his parents never asked about. He wanted to be a ship's captain, to see the world, to have adventures. "Mom says that's stupid. She wants me to be a lawyer." I thought of Dmitri at 9, wanting to be an astronaut, settling for sales because it paid better. Dreams aren't stupid, I told him. Sometimes the people who call them stupid are just scared of their own forgotten dreams.